Hi, this is Alexcursus, a show where I take a look at some gunpla and see how authentic they are. This time, we are looking at the HGUC MS-14JG Gelgoog Jaeger. Gelgoog Jaeger started off as a simple sniper variant of Gelgoog. However, as the 1-year war deteriorates for the Xeons, they start to pile on more mission requirements on it. Ended up being more of a spec op type of mobile suit, making the name more apt, Hunter. Now, as the Xeons war effort deteriorates, they also run into material shortage. The Unified Maintenance Project helped out a bit, but it looks like they really need to tap into the Federation's supply line as well. That's why they made several changes to the Gelgoog Jaeger. This also means units operating Gelgoog Jaeger can stay behind the enemy line longer. I'll be rating this kit with Saga, style, action, gimmick, and absence. Style is how much does the gunpla resemble its counterparts in anime, manga, games, or other media. In case of the Gelgoog Jaeger, it is one of those early HGUC kits where they're trying to balance the realism and anime accuracy. Now, what's doubly interesting is that Gelgoog Jaeger was designed by Ichibachi, the same person who did the New Gundam and Power Labor fame. His design work for the War in Pocket series is mainly updating Okawa's design to the late 80s sensibility of realism. So ideally, the proportion of Gelgoog Jaeger should be fairly similar to Okawa's design. However, like much of the early HGUC, there were some emphasis of making Gundam more fashionable to the early 2000s sensibility. So the overall result is a lankier version of its appearance in the anime, despite how the original design is somewhat close to Okawa's. Now you may be wondering, where is the mono eye for the Gelgoog Jaeger? Let's take a closer look. If you can see it faintly, there is a mono eye right in the middle. It is a clear plastic part. However, Bandai kinda forgot. This is a Gelgoog. It doesn't have a back camera like GMs and Gundams, so they can't really get like piping from it. The plastic they use is actually very bright and does have light collective properties, somewhat translucent, if you will. But yeah, because of the lack of light piping, you can't really see it, or you can barely see the hint of it. Otherwise, the part separation for the head is relatively modern, with the forehead going over the chin and then front back, a bit of a thing of the time, but it is relatively smooth. You will notice a large gap here. I think, well, in the lore, the forehead can flip up and reveal more of the mono eye for long-range sniping. But it is not a mechanism represented in the kit. But, that styling is still there. Slightly different heatsink on the back. but otherwise unmistakably a Gelgoog. The chests have a color separation like Gundam, and then frills like Gelgoog, a very clear cockpit compartment and a cockpit hatch, which is part of the abdomen. That is some good color separation even back then. Skirts is where you really get the hints that the Gelgoog Jaeger is somewhat closer to a Federation design, with the rather Gundam-like front skirts. Side skirts is kinda back to Xeon's curvy ones, but yeah, the front is very flat. The legs are unmistakably Gelgoog though. You do have a embossed line for the part separation, so that looks good. Not so lucky for the shin, but that is a common thing of the time. Not too bad. The feet, again, rather Federation looking as well, but still as large as Xeon mobile suits tends to be. Onto the back, the calf armor just come together in the middle as usual. You probably see this today too. Not a big deal as they do come into a relatively sharp point. So not too hard to do seamless mod if you do, go for it. You will also notice some heavy hand weathering, not really, not masking effort that I am doing. Because the plastic they use on the Gelgoog Jaeger whitens quite a lot. It probably looks fine on the camera, but to the naked eye they look rather obnoxious. So I opt for the heavy hand dirty up to cover them instead. Not a common thing happen to reprints, to be honest, but I guess they could improve it somewhere down the line. Back of the skirt, surprisingly, they have separate parts for the thrusters on the back skirts. So that is quite an achievement for this kit. Before we go further, this kit also have the thrusters for the inside of the leg armor or trousers, unlike the G frame. You don't really see them even at the back, unless you have a light hitting directly into it. You don't see that, but they are included in this kit on both legs and at the back of the skirt. And they have quite a bit of sculpt in them as well. Onto the backpack. Yeah, this is a very thin piece of plastic antenna. That's why I have to bring out a stand to sort of lift up the whole thing. And yeah, a otherwise very non-Xeon looking backpack. Even Federation like to some degree. And talking about part separations, all the thrusters here are also separate parts. The apogee motor on the side, it is on a side panel. So what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 parts for a backpack. Before we count the auxiliary fuel rods or fuel tanks, which is for Gelgoog Jaeger to operate far away from mothership or their base. Again, for the ever increasing need for Xeon to do special operation behind enemy lines. They are technically going straight into Gelgoog's torso, presumably allowing them the extra propellant to be used on other thrusters. Onto the arms, the shoulder armor on the back, a extra reinforced rib on the side or near the middle where the shoulder would be. And to the front, you can see another separate apogee motor in front. And we have the infamous side thrusters on the shoulder armor in Gelgoog Jaeger. It is infamous because it is in and out of fashion for regular Gelgoog. At least for Gelgoog Jaeger, it is a constant, and it is a separate part, not part of the front black clamshell of the shoulder armor. And the more amazing parts and color separations. Shoulder is gray to the one-piece bicep in red, and then to the elbow joint, which, if you notice, moves independently from, or rather have embossed or sculpts for different positions for it. So yeah, very detailed joints. And then probably not an apogee motor, more like an access port on top of the forearm. It is a two-piece clamshell, but the side of it is covered by the auxiliary module. In this case is a beam spot gun, which we will save for Gimmick. So is the hand. We will save that for Gimmick. So you will be wondering, the Gelgoog Jaeger looks like it have a lot of color separations. How does Bandai keep its cost down to the same as other big Xeon mobile suit, meaning, about the same price as a regular Gundam? Well, you can't see it because it's covered by the shoulder armor, but they use a single peg joint like they did with GM. So you don't get the extra shoulder movement like you do with Gelgoog. And yeah, even the exhaust on the side of the torso is sculpted. But yeah, this is one of them being rather simplified. I should also talk about the color separation of the foot. It is a piece. This red piece is actually having connection to the rest of the side of the foot on top of this brown piece, which is something modern kits like the Delenza would use again to get this type of two-tone colors on the same parts. So yeah, all in all, aside from the unfortunate result of using a clear part for the mono eye, Gelgoog Jaeger have very good color separation and part separation even for today. If anything, it is the choice of using a fashionable proportion, the choice to have a style that makes it more massive. It's not a bad choice, but it is not an authentic choice. Not to the anime, not to the line arts. And yeah, even though like I said, the parts and color separation is excellent, even for today, it is still somewhat archaic. That's why I will keep the style at A. Next is action. Action is not just the number of articulations, but how useful those articulations are. Back to Gelgoog Jaeger's head, it is on a ball joint, the forever neck joint that HGUC had been using until recently, pretty much, but they sort of have an update version of it, so it is their forever joint. But the collar piece really limited the range of the joints in the torso, so you are really only working with one ball joint, and the Gelgoog head is rather massive, so you don't get a lot of up and down. Also, the excellent color separation also means the abdomen is being stuck with the chest, so you got no crunch. However, you do have slight give from the waist joint, so very tiny tilts. You can notice that underneath the cockpit, very tiny, and then swivel. Skirts somewhat different, not the length skirts that Bandai was using, but two actual discs that you can pivot up and down. So no ball joint for side movement, to give it a bit more of a natural look. But there is some room for the skirts to move a bit side to side. The side skirt is on a single joint, but it is on a peg as well, so you can turn it a bit if you need to, but it lifts up quite high, much higher than how much the thigh can go up. It is still using the old HGUC ball joint, or just HG ball joint in general, and being so chunky as Gelgoog, you only get 30 degrees. You can certainly kick. Rather, the knee and the skirt armor stop you from kicking too high. But you can definitely bring down the knee for a bit more. Not a lot though, just slightly more. Like other kits of its time, this bike having a double joint knee, it is barely 90, partly due to the design, partly due to the armor, or Gelgoog Jaeger's own chunkiness. The foot is on a single ball joint, but it is quite far out, so, and with the rather open leg armor, you can kick quite a bit further out in front, but tiptoeing, not so much. While you can't really do a kneeling pose, Y stand is pretty simple. Yeah, this is as far as Gelgoog Jaeger can go for kneeling, so not at all. More like, running with style. Let's put it that way. The arms, shoulder armor is independent of the arms, but like we have mentioned, it only have a single peg out from the torso, so the arm have no gifts, but the two joints, or the two axle joint inside. You can still pivot, and the elbow is less than 90 because of the chunkiness of Gelgoog Jaeger itself. Hand is on the ball joint. This is a supporting open palm. You do get a universal fist as alternative. Trigger finger for the beam machine gun hand. And it's very easy for Gelgoog Jaeger. And it's very easy for Gelgoog Jaeger to hold a beam machine gun comfortably. The back, all this thruster can't move, although you do have a bit of play on the top thruster / apogee motors. And because it is a single peg for the extra propellant tank, you can pose them a bit, which could be useful. So yeah, Gelgoog Jaeger's action is by no means bad for its time, but it is pretty limited for today. I guess the silver lining is how good it looks. There's no holo or other unsightly features that you will see after you move it around. But it is still a beetle for action. Uh, Despite how it can pull up some iconic poses, it can't really bring the scope to its mono eye, and it can't kneel, although it is a space sniper, so it doesn't really need to kneel still. Next is Gimmick. Gimmick is usually the onboard weapons and optional weapons, as well as some other additional functionalities on the mobile suits. For the Gelgoog Jaeger, that would be the falcons on the head, the beam spot gun on the forearm, and the beam machine gun, which thus looks like a real world machine gun of some sort. And paradoxically, there are quite a few records of sniper kills who uses machine gun. So Xeon is definitely onto something about this thing. It is more than a two-piece clamshell. Most of the gun is a two-piece. The scope does have a separate piece for the lens. I did paint it so it looks like a scope. Otherwise you just get gray. And you do get a separate piece for the muzzle device so that it looks like a barrel. A lot more pieces than most weapons of its time. Still looks pretty good for today, I would say. The scopes are not as crisp as what you might see today, but this somewhat soft look does match the gun that this is trying to mimic in the real world. So I like it quite a lot. I would say it's pretty good even for today. So long that you paint or have some good sticker for the lens. We do get a update version of this gun that we might take a look sometime later. But for now, that's it for this gun. The beam spot gun, you will notice they do have parts and color separations for them. And you do see the opening that have a suspiciously close diameter. Unfortunately, it is not big enough to fit a beam saber blade, but you can definitely modify it yourself to make it large enough. In fact, some depiction of the Gelgoog Jaeger do make them use the beam spot gun as the beam saber as well. Falcons on the head. Xeon do have falcons on some of their mobile suits, but they are usually for the team leaders, probably as spotting tracer so the team can follow his targeting, which is part of the idea of Xeon about Gelgoog Jaeger, giving them to team leaders where they can direct the rest of the troops while providing fast support himself. Quite heavy of a workload, but given the situation Xeon was in, it is not unreasonable. And I guess you can say you can pull out the auxiliary propellant tank as a gimmick. And yeah, the beam saber blade, I have to took it from other kits. This kit have no beam saber blade. So for gimmick, if you check the datasheet on the manual, it only say beam machine gun for armaments. Not even the Fat Falcons or the beam spot gun, which they do mention in the detail page, but yeah. And this kit is not trying to tell you or sell you more weapons than it have. Or rather, this kit is not selling you a lot of weapons. You do get a bit of surprises, but you don't really get the usual treatment of a close range weapon or melee weapon. Having said that, this is everything Gelgoog Jaeger is supposed to have in the lore and in the anime. It would be nice if the kits include a bit more, but I think this is fine, so I will give it an A. Last category is absence, where the kits fail to deliver to make the kit less authentic. I would like to start with what I forgot in style, which is a sticker sheets. Once again, we get sticker decals instead of plain stickers. For the Gelgoog Jaeger, you got the two numbers, or one for the anime, one for the illustration, and then a unit marking. And the black is for the mono eye block, which was red like the rest of the heads, but I painted it. It's quite easy. Because it is this plastic decal, it would look slightly nicer than a metallic black sticker, but it might not have as much coverage. Either way, because the rest of the sculpt is pretty good, I don't think this would hurt the style score overall, but just something that I forgot that I should bring back in absence. And yeah, I have mentioned the price. This thing is selling at the same price point as most bigger Xeon mobile suit, or around the same price as a Gundam, if not slightly more expensive. And you can see where all those money go to, with all the color separations and part separations. And by no means these efforts are any less to date, especially after we have looked at the Lensa, which is about as chunky and pretty much have the same part separation, only done more cleverly, and probably have the computer technology to integrate that into their design. Really what this kit is missing is just some extra goodies, really, which is not very common for its time and not a guarantee today. So I can't really fault it. The choice of making the mono eye into a clear part was good intention. I suspect they wanted to include the flip up mechanism from the original design as well, but that was cut during the production and that was rarely seen in games as well. A plus for effort. Like, if I heard about a kit that would have the auxiliary propulsion tanks, I expect they would be absent, but they are not. And they got quite a bit of sculpture despite being simple clamshells. And the way they're attached is movable. You can argue there is a hole left underneath with no cover for it, but I don't think that is a big problem. And the fact that they do provide you with an extra universal grip hand for the left hand, in case you do find a melee weapon or other, or a sidearm for the Gelgoog Jaeger, that is pretty good. Again, this stand is just here so that I wouldn't destroy this antenna when I put down the Gelgoog Jaeger on the table. This extra tab on the end of the antenna is supposed to be a safety tab so that people won't poke the antenna into their eye or reduce the damage by increasing the surface area. However, if you look outside at your surface tower, they do have a block at the end of the antenna. So this comes around as a realistic depiction. That is rather crazy. Anyways, the Gelgoog Jaeger only have a brief appearance in the War in Pocket, and very fine between subsequent depictions. And these kits represent most of those already, except for the beam saber that comes in and out based on the game's needs to balance things out. Either way, I don't think this kit is missing much, so I will give it an A for absence. To recap, the Gelgoog Jaeger is an early HGUC where Bandai is still trying to find a balance between fashionable and traditional or faithful authentic mobile suit design. And I think they strike a decent balance with Gelgoog Jaeger. And for such an early HGUC kit, the Gelgoog Jaeger have some amazing part separation and color separation. Some of them are very clever, some of them are very clunky, but they are here. I can't really fault it. It's just that this thing is really old from keeping it from an S, so get an A. Action, being chunky and a OHG does not help, because Bandai have to include so much color and part separation. They cut down even more of the action a HGUC can achieve, a la the shoulder movement and the extra ankle joint inside. So I can comfortably give Gelgoog Jaeger a B for action, because it can at least get a comfortable or realistic pose supporting its own weapon. As for gimmick, Gelgoog Jaeger is only really known with its beam machine gun. So with a bit more care on the beam machine gun, with the scopes and extra part separation, with the attention for its operation, for the action, and then they even have part separation, and good part separation, and color separation for the beam sport gun, which usually get ignored for a lot of other kits. While the head falcons are just scopes, they are easy enough to be picked out with panel lining. And then the auxiliary propellant tanks. I think the Gelgoog Jaeger got good gimmick. Just, no surprise to speak of, just solid good. So it gets an A for gimmick. Finally, for absence, Bandai need to make some choices, some sacrifices, but I think the direction is overall good, providing the norm of the time. Sure, they can do even more part separation for the knee to make it look cleaner, but I think they make a good call to keep the cost down, because the Gelgoog Jaeger is kind of a mass-produced mobile suit, and they do provide enough for you to just need to work on it a little bit to make it extra special. They could easily make these thrusters, RPG motors, and the beam sport gun, these ones, not the same color as the armor, but they didn't. They made a whole sprue for it, and also the elusive side thruster of the Gelgoog's short armor. So yeah, I can't fault Bandai for missing anything for the Gelgoog Jaeger. So it gets an A in absence as well for not having surprise goodies. So the verdict for the HGUC 1-144 Gelgoog Jaeger is A for style, B for action, A for gimmick, and A for absence. Pretty much what you need for a Gelgoog Jaeger, and I would say one of the better Gelgoog entries for people who like Gelgoog but hesitant about their age. This one have both the complication of the older technology, but also the color separation that you find in the modern day. It's not hard to fix up, and even if you don't, it would still look pretty decent. More importantly, it won't break your bank. I might go on to mod the beam spot gun, I might not. Who's to say? The beam machine gun is just cool. Lack of a melee weapon or a sidearm is a bit of a bummer, but with all the extra parts that you get from other kits, you can sort it out. This is my recommendation for a Gelgoog. If you find yourself interested in them and not sure how much you want to invest into them. Thanks for watching. See you next time.